It'd help if I unmute my fucking mic. I'll learn this shit one day. But I was saying that as promised, this is a video essay or stream or chat or talk or whatever the fuck you want to call it about the events that transpired 50 years ago, yesterday, in Santiago de Chile, in regards to the fact that the United States was really not a fan of an elected individual who called himself a Marxist ruling in one of the most resource rich and important countries in the Western Hemisphere. Because the United States, Maurice called it a practitioner, Maurice Bishop, the deposed, well, not just deposed, but brutally murdered Prime Minister of Grenada, representing the New Jewel movement, called the United States a prime practitioner of backyardism. So the United States considers Chile, Brazil, Argentina, uh, Cuba, Mexico, all of the countries in the Western Hemisphere, save for maybe Canada, and it's kind of dogged them out as well. But let's be fair, everybody dogs Canada out. But it dogs out all of these countries and treats all of these countries like shit and expects to take all of these countries' resources for free. And in the past couple decades, there's been a very strong and very militant movement by certain leaders in the global South part of the Western Hemisphere to say, no, you're not going to keep taking our shit for free. Because when you take our shit for free, you make our people suffer. And you install dictators like Pinochet, and you remove popular leaders like Salvador Allende, and you do all sorts of horrible things, and it makes our people suffer. And we're tired of our people suffering. Do these countries have problems? Yes. Do these leaders have problems? Yes. Are these leaders oftentimes ideologically inconsistent? Yes. But as we develop, as I develop, and as I study more about these countries, I start to realize that us sitting in the West and sitting on top of our perch of stolen mineral resources and criticizing and be like, you didn't do this right, you didn't do that right, you didn't do this right, you fucked up here. Like, who does that serve? The people of these countries do not listen to us. So it's our job, it's our task as revolutionaries, leftists, progressives, what have you, in the Western Hemisphere to be as supportive as humanly possible of these states when they make their first moves away from United States hegemony. So Allende is unique for many reasons. I mean, he was the first elected Marxist president in the Western Hemisphere. If I recall correctly, he was the first elected Marxist president anywhere in the world. But I digress. But his last words were also recorded. He gave a speech to his country as the La Moneda Palace, basically the White House of Chile, was being strafed by putschist coup elements in the Chilean military. So he recorded his final words to his people and his final words to the world, and it's very morbid, but it's also very interesting and it is very, very inspirational. Yes, the audio quality is shit because this was recorded in the 70s. I cannot do anything about it because I was not alive then.
La Fuerza Aérea ha bombardeado las torres de Radio Portales y Radio Corporación. Mis palabras no tienen amargura sino decepción y serán ellas el castigo moral para los que han traicionado soldados de Chile, comandantes en jefes titulares, el almirante Merino que se ha autodesignado, más el señor Mendoza, general rastrero, que solo ayer manifestara su fidelidad y lealtad al gobierno.
Carabineros are basically cops in Chile and a lot of Spanish-speaking countries.
También será nominado director general del Carabineros. Ante estos hechos, solo me cabe decirle a los trabajadores, yo no voy a renunciar. Colocado en un tránsito histórico, pagaré con mi vida la lealtad del pueblo. Y les digo que tengo la certeza que la semilla que entregáramos a la conciencia digna de miles y miles de chilenos no podrá ser cegada definitivamente. Tienen la fuerza, podrán avasallarnos, pero no se detienen los procesos sociales ni con el crimen ni con la fuerza.
That last part, social movements cannot be stopped by crime or by force. That kind of just demonstrates his idealism, if you will, his sort of lingering bourgeois idealism. Of course, in the culture that I come from, black culture, it's kind of shitty to speak ill of the dead, but also as a Marxist, I abide by the dictum that we must do a ruthless critique of all that exists or existed. And saying that a social movement cannot be stopped by violence or by crime. I mean, yeah, that's how the ruling class came to power in the first place, like the bourgeois revolutions, the rule of the what was the merchant and the property owning class, like that came about through chopping off the heads of kings. So a social movement can definitely come to power through force. Granted, Allende came to power through an election, but um, George Jackson appropriately pointed out in one of his books, I believe it was Soledad Brother, that when you come to power through an election and you do not thoroughly gut the previously existing rule of the rich, if you do not, as Lenin would say, uh, thoroughly decapitate and replace the old ruling class order, and you do not set up a people's order. I mean, Allende's party had a militia, okay? Like they had a militia and they had armed force, but it was not thoroughly trained, it was not thoroughly prepared to go blow for blow with the military. So this ultimately came down to a fight between professional American trained military forces and armed workers and peasants, campesinos in the streets. And as we all know, because we've studied history, or you should have studied history, Allende's people unfortunately lost, and Chile was plunged into decades of horror and darkness.
La historia es nuestra y la hacen los pueblos, trabajadores de mi patria. Quiero agradecerles la lealtad que siempre tuvieron, la confianza que depositaron en un hombre que solo fue intérprete de grandes anhelos de justicia, que empeñó su palabra y que respetaría la Constitución y la ley y así lo hizo.
Another thing, like you gave your word to respect the Constitution and the law. Okay, you have a bourgeois Constitution and a bourgeois law. Like did the people that killed you, did they respect the Constitution and the law? Because I'm pretty sure every constitution in every country in the world forbids reactionary coups. It forbids the military to bomb the presidential palace and work with the United States to start basically proto color uprisings. A color uprising is basically something that it's an astroturfed protest that leads to the collapse of an existing order. So we can interpret what happened in Chile because you had like middle class groups and stuff. Okay, Nixon's thing and Kissinger's thing and all these other people, their thing was to they didn't just go in and start bombing shit. They didn't filibuster Chile like they would have done in the 1910s and the early 1900s. Okay, they wanted to convey the impression that this was Chileans rising up against the dictator. Of course, by his own words, like just listening to this dude was not a dictator of any sort. Okay? But the American people do not know that because the American people, unfortunately, are not a reading people, as Huey P. Newton would say. They listen to people like me, or they listen to the fucking news. So the American people, unfortunately, are not in the habit of investigating things for themselves. And I guarantee you that very, very few Americans actually knew a Chilean. So they were not able to investigate for themselves. Very, very few Americans, like Anglo Americans, Americans that grow up speaking English, actually bother to learn Spanish. So when they're watching the news and they're listening to people talking in the background, they can't understand what those people are saying. So the United States government has an entire industry. It has the New York Times, it has the Washington Post, it has all of these various apparatuses that manufacture consent. Like if you had talked to the average American in 1973 about Allende, they would not. They either would not know who he was, or they would be like, "Oh yeah, it's that communist dictator that was overthrown in Chile." Never mind, they don't know where they don't know Chile from chili beans, but that's what they read in their local newspaper. That's what they read in the Associated Press Newswire. That's what they read on Reuters. That's what they saw fucking Tom Brokaw or Walter Cronkite say at 6 o'clock. So they don't know any better. But Nixon's idea was to make the economy scream. We're going to talk about how he and his people and the Chicago boys made the economy scream later. But basically, let's fuck up the Chilean economy so that people take to the streets. Let's encourage people to take to the streets. Chile's the best place to eat. They actually do have some pretty good cuisine, from what I've seen. I've never been there. Too broke to go to fucking Chile on a whim. Well, too broke for now. Who knows what my financial cards hold? There's a donation page on my Twitch stream if you all are interested in sending me to jaunt around the world and report from those places. Anyways, let's go back to El Compañero Allende.
En este momento Definitivo, el último en que yo pueda dirigirme a ustedes. Pero que aprovechen la lección. El capital foráneo, el imperialismo, unido a la reacción, creó el clima para que las Fuerzas Armadas rompieran.
Foreign capital, imperialism, and their consequences created the climate in which the armed forces betrayed tradition. Okay, reactionary forces don't really care about tradition. I know that sounds like a contradiction in terms, but if tradition allows for the election of a Marxist leader, then they will cast tradition to the wind. But at the same time, they're going to restore the old ruling class tradition. Oh, you're talking about Chili's, the restaurant. I've eaten there once in my life. I think they gave me food poisoning. I don't eat at those shitty chain restaurants. They're horrible places to eat. I know I sound like a hipster, but I value my health and I value not puking and shitting at the same time. Anyways, foreign capital, imperialism, and their consequences make the economy scream, make the people suffer so that they blame Allende and so that they topple the government. Or sit by and watch as the military topples the government.
Su tradición, la que le enseñara Schneider y que regimara el comandante Araya.
Never trust a general with a German name. Why the fuck are you keeping a general named Schneider around? This dude's dad probably did some horrible things to people in Germany. And he fled to either Argentina or he fled to Chile or he fled to Chile through Argentina and now he's doing horrible things to you. Never, ever, ever trust a German.
Víctimas del mismo sector social que hoy estará en sus casas esperando con mano ajena reconquistar el poder para seguir defendiendo sus granjerías y sus privilegios. Me dirijo sobre todo a la modesta mujer de nuestra tierra, a la campesina que creyó en nosotros, a la obrera que trabajó más, a la madre que supo nuestra preocupación por los niños. Me dirijo a los profesionales de la patria, a los profesionales patriotas, a los que hace días estuvieron trabajando contra la sedición auspiciada por los colegios profesionales, colegios de clase para defender.
So yeah, this just shows like Allende's Chile was sort of. It wasn't necessarily what we Marxist, Leninist, Maoists, or whatever would call a worker state, because a worker state would not allow these bourgeois institutions and the old bourgeois military. Like Pinochet was one of Allende's generals. Pinochet swore an oath to Allende and then ended up fucking sticking a knife in his back. You cannot allow that to happen. I mean, this speech, it's a beautiful speech. It's enough to move you to tears. And I'm not going to say that Allende brought this on himself through his naivete, because he wasn't a naive person. But when you try to rule, when you try to administer through the bourgeois apparatus, and you allow, like, this is basically the equivalent of Lenin letting unremolded, unapologetic white army generals sit around and now call themselves generals of the Red Army. I mean, Chile never even set up a Red Army. Like, it was literally the same exact military force that was in power when the bourgeoisie still held control of everything. So the lesson that George Jackson tried to teach us about Allende and similar movements before he got murdered, at least in the third world, is that you have to go all out. Like, you have to remove these people before they remove you. It's bad to have to give a speech like this. And then, like, this is a horrible thing to have to do. Millions of people put their hopes in you. Millions of people trusted you. Millions of people voted for you. And you have to take that mandate. You have to take the will of the people, and you have to take the hopes and dreams of people seriously. Like, there is no reason that you should have to give a speech like this, because you've got hard motherfuckers, you've got workers, you've got peasants who are ready to throw down. I mean, and Allende, in a way, had that, but he should have definitely purged the military.
También las ventajas de una sociedad capitalista de unos pocos. Le dijo a la juventud, aquellos que cantaron, entregaron su alegría y su espíritu de lucha. Le dijo al hombre de Chile, al obrero, al campesino.
I don't particularly care much about what Hoxha thinks about anything. Hoxha was a racist. He called jazz jungle music. So, like, the thing with me is, okay, like, people, I see people on Twitter always talking about read Hegel, read so and so. Like, if you say bad things about black people, I'm not going to take anything seriously that you say, unless I have to. Like, I have to admit that the law of gravity exists because I'm not an idiot. I'm a dialectical materialist. The law of gravity can be objectively observed. But like, in the field of philosophy, in the field of political theory, like, if you say bad shit about my people or our cultural products like jazz, and you call it monkey music, like, I'm not going to take seriously shit that you say. Hegel said that Africa was outside of history and considered my ancestors to be a bunch of filthy savages. So why the fuck should I take anything this man says about history or theory or philosophy seriously, even if he did? I mean, shit, Marx didn't even rely all that much on him. Marx had to stand him upside down on his head to make sense of him and make him useful. So, fuck Hegel. And fuck anybody who hates black people and our cultural products. Fuck Hoxha.
Intelectual. Aquellos que serán perseguidos.
Fascism hasn't just already been active in your country for many hours, bro. Fascism has been active in your country since you took power. Like, as soon as the results came out that Salvador Allende was going to be president of Chile, okay, like, they just went into overdrive. You had the fascist street gangs. You had fascist elements in the majority of the military. You had all sorts of people. You had American copper interests. You had American lithium interests. You had all sorts of nasty people that were like, yeah, let's fuck this motherfucker up because he thinks shit's sweet. He thinks shit's sweet. He thinks that we're going to allow a fucking Marxist to run a key part of the global economy. Absolutely not. You're not going to be allowed to nationalize shit. We may let little shit slide. We may let little reforms slide. Okay? You want to give everybody universal health care. Okay, whoop-de-fucking-do. But, like, fucking with our money? Fascism was already active in your country, bro.
En nuestro país el fascismo ya estuvo hace muchas horas presente en los atentados terroristas, volando los puentes, cortando la línea férrea, destruyendo los oleoductos y los gasoductos, frente al silencio de los que tenían la obligación de proteger.
There was silence from those who were supposed to defend them, because those who were supposed to defend them, yeah, they were bought out. Their officers told them, look, if you go out there and you try to do your job, I will literally shoot you in the back of the head. That's what they were told. You're going to deal with saboteurs. You're going to deal with wreckers. You're going to deal with stuff like this. You thought that you could be a Marxist that took power in a peaceful fashion. Now, am I saying that there could be no such thing as a Marxist being elected to Congress in the United States, or a Marxist being elected alderman? So, no, absolutely not. But the commanding heights of the bourgeois system, president of the fucking United States, president of Chile, absolutely not. You would have to create a whole new system. Because if you rely on the old system, you're going to be fucked. Because the old system, the people that propped up and supported the old system, they're still going to be there. And they're not going to let you do anything. Like when the Bolsheviks took over, and like you had like the SARS people that hung around, like they fucked everything up. Okay, they took all of the treaties that the Tsar and his reactionary prime minister had signed. They burned them. They hid shit. They even fucked with the charity funds. Like, if I recall correctly, Alexandra Kollontai was the People's Commissar of Welfare. I don't know exactly what her title was, but it basically dealt with charity and aid to indigent workers, etc. And, like, they literally stole all the money and took everything. They even tried to get the servants to run off. So, That's how they're going to fuck with you. They are not going to make it easy for you. They're not going to be like, okay, well, we adhere to the democratic tradition and we're just going to allow you to peacefully transition. Good job. No. They're going to pat you on the back and stab you in the back at the same time. Reform, if it has a place, is as a single front within a militant struggle, as far as I can tell. But looking at reformism in the U.S., its gains only come as concessions to militancy. Debs and Sanders are great at raising consciousness, with very little material gains that I know of. I mean, I don't know. Eugene Debs ran a presidential campaign from prison, from federal prison, so there's something to be said from that. For that, Bernie Sanders, honestly, Jesse Jackson's 1984 campaign platform was further to the left than Bernie ever was. But Bernie is also responsible for an entire generation of people, actually two entire generations, millennials and Zoomers, actually taking socialism seriously, even if the conception of socialism was fucky and stood on its head. He still got people talking about it. So I used to dump on Bernie in my more edgy Maoist phase, meaning my early 20s. But like as I study more and as I hang out with and talk to DSA people more, who actually tell me the impact that Bernie had on them, I'm kind of softer, getting softer on the old guy. Is he going to lead the proletarian revolution in the United States? Absolutely not.
La historia lo juzgará. Seguramente Radio Magallanes será callada y el metal tranquilo de mi voz no llegará a ustedes, no importa. Lo seguirán oyendo. Siempre estaré junto a ustedes. Por lo menos mi recuerdo será el hombre digno que fue leal a la lealtad. El pueblo debe defenderse, pero no sacrificar. El pueblo no debe dejarse arrasar ni acribillar, pero tampoco puede humillar.
It sounds kind of pacifist, like Martin Luther King could have given this speech.
Trabajadores de mi patria, tengo fe en Chile y su destino. Superará otros hombres este momento gris y amargo donde la traición pretende imponer. Sigan ustedes sabiendo que mucho más temprano que tarde, de nuevo, abrirán las grandes alamedas por donde pase el hombre libre para construir una sociedad mejor. ¡Viva Chile! ¡Viva el pueblo! ¡Vivan los trabajadores! Estas fueron mis últimas palabras. Tengo la certeza de que mi sacrificio no será en vano. Tengo la certeza de que por lo menos será una lección.
And that's another thing. Like when you're talking about state power or any type of power, you cannot look for moral lessons. Okay? Like power is the ability to define a phenomenon, to define something, and make it act in a desired manner. If I wanted to reach over here and break this fucking boom off my desk, that's power. I have power over it. If it reaches up and kicks me back in the fucking face, then the boom has power over me. It's an endless struggle when you're talking about power. If you're a nice person, like I used the Ned Stark example, if you're familiar with Game of Thrones or the Song of Ice and Fire series, Ned Stark, good dude, awesome guy, would make a dope high school principal, will make a cool high school professor, will make a nice small town alderman. But he's this honorable dude from the north of Westeros, which is basically Great Britain with giants. So you got Ned Stark. He goes into the fucking shark pit, the wolf's den, and it's ironic I said that because his family symbol, the sigil of his house, is a wolf. But he goes down to fucking King's Landing, which is sort of the Washington, D.C. or the London of Westeros. And he ends up getting his head cut off because he goes down and he starts investigating things that people that are in power down there don't want him to investigate. He starts asking untoward questions. He gets into a duel with the queen's brother who murdered the last king. So this is already a dangerous ass dude. Anyways, he makes a variety of stupid decisions. He brings his daughters down there so that they can possibly end up, actually there's no possibly, they do end up as fucking hostages. Well, the younger one runs off, but the big one, the older one, Sansa Stark, ends up being a hostage to people that hate him and people that he hated. So he just makes a huge, gigantic mess for him. So Salvador Allende is Ned Stark. of Chile. When you're talking about politics, you kind of have to waddle and wade in the fucking muck and mire because those are the quality of people that you're dealing with. You cannot look for an honorable moral lesson when you're engaged in politics, especially if you're engaged in bourgeois politics. Of course, the history of the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China shows that proletarian politics, or at least what we call proletarian politics, is no walk in the park either.
Moral que castigará la felonía, la cobardía y la traición.
I think I might do a movie night sometime. Well, actually, I think I might make it regular. Everybody's a little finger. Littlefinger, he's like basically like the fucking no good, sneaky, dirty dude. Yeah, watch Game of Thrones. It's a good show. But this is actually something cyber socialism, Project Cybersign. This is something that actually really, really intrigues me. So I might do a like a regular weekly movie night, starting with this because this was some pretty cool shit. Like socialism, or in the case of the USSR revisionism, actually laid a lot of the groundwork for modern day computing. Anyways, back to Allende. Um, he was besties with Fidel Castro, and Fidel actually like encouraged him to take a more proletarian revolutionary line. He was like, "Look, bruh, you think shit is sweet? Like they're gonna fuck you. They're gonna fuck you up." And no, we're not gonna watch all of this, but let me see. Let me get the auto translate going because I understand and can speak and read Spanish, but a lot of people can't. So I'm turning on the auto translate. Ew, Afrikaans. Ugh, disgusting tongue. But anyways, so this is an important. Uh, it says histórico diálogo entre Fidel Castro y Salvador Allende. Yes, for production disorder. Completo. We're not going to watch completo, but like let's just see the interaction between these two. Fidel Castro actually gave him an AK-47, which the Chilean government tells us he used to kill himself. I'm kind of iffy on that. I think that he was murdered, but I don't know. I won there.
Popular con un programa realmente muy radical para tratar de provocar profundas transformaciones estructurales en Chile. De hecho, el 11 de julio de 1971, antes de la llegada de Fidel Castro, él nacionaliza el cobre. ¿Qué vamos a ver hoy? Realmente un diálogo distendido entre dos estadistas, un Fidel muy respetuoso respecto de la figura de Salvador Allende, aunque en ese momento había un debate. Estaba muy claro que lo que impulsaba a Cuba eran los movimientos armados para la toma del poder, como había sucedido en Cuba. Buscaban la revolución por la vía armada. En Chile se buscaba un camino diferente. Vamos a ver un diálogo. Les reitero.
Also, I would not say that Cuba was involved in exporting arms struggle. That was Che's thing, but Che by this time had been dead. This was in I think early '70s, so Che had been dead for like 3 or 4 years. But Che and Fidel did not really agree on everything. That's part of why Che left Cuba. So um I would not consider Cuba a yeah, they definitely helped send weapons, and in the case of Africa, they sent more than weapons. They sent troops to mingle their blood with the blood of my people, for which I will ever be grateful. But like I would not consider like that's more of a United States government myth. Cuba did not really seek to topple other countries' governments. Now, if there was a movement that was progressive, that was dedicated to helping topple another country's government, possibly. But like, did they go and try to astroturf armed uprisings in other countries? No, that's not how they worked.
Muy distendido entre dos estadistas que no se privan de comentar nada de lo que estaba pasando en ese momento en Chile y en Cuba.
just general scenes of the working and peasant class. The Dialogue of America.
Fenómeno que en estos instantes concita la atención de todo el mundo.
I'm always struck by how tall Fidel was. I think he was like 6'4", but like he towers over everybody in all of the recordings and pictures that I've seen of him. He was actually a pretty accomplished baseball player. As a matter of fact, I saw some reactionary idiot said that the only reason that he became a communist, which if you're a Maoist is kind of in debate, but like the only reason that he became a communist was because he couldn't make it on a U.S. baseball team, which I find hilarious.
De que el comandante Fidel Castro llegó a Chile, muchos periodistas han estado pensando cómo poder seguir una conversación entre estas dos figuras de la política mundial. Y este es el momento y esta es la oportunidad de poder tenerlos próximos y frente a frente en un diálogo abierto sobre temas que interesan a toda la humanidad. Presidente Allende, se habla no solo en Chile, sino en todo el mundo de la expresión vía chilena. ¿Cómo podría usted definir este proceso político que se ha dado en llamar la vía chilena?
En realidad, la denominación de vía chilena podríamos decir casi que es una exageración, pero yo creo que más que nada tiende a tipificar algo que está de acuerdo con nuestra realidad, nuestra historia y nuestra tradición. Pueblos que luchan por su emancipación tienen lógicamente que adecuar a su propia realidad las tácticas, ¿no?, y la estrategia.
All right, so he's doing pretty good so far. He's basically saying that people who are in struggle have to adapt to their own reality, the tactics and strategy. But let's see how he talks about, like, how did he adapt Marxist theory and strategy to Chile? Or is he going to talk about it at all? Or is it just going to be vague?
Que ha de conducirnos a las transformaciones. Chile, por sus características, por su historia, es un país en donde la institucionalidad burguesa ha funcionado a plenitud y en donde dentro de esta legalidad burguesa el pueblo sacrificadamente ha ido avanzando y consiguiendo conquistas, ha ido concientizándose, ha ido comprendiendo que no es dentro de los regímenes capitalistas ni del reformismo en donde Chile podrá alcanzar la dimensión de país dueño de su independencia económica y capaz de llegar a niveles superiores de vida y de existencia. Hay que considerar entonces que Chile tiene condiciones diferentes a otros países. Quiero, por ejemplo, destacar que el Congreso chileno ha tenido 160 años de ininterrumpido funcionamiento. Quiero hacer ver que las Fuerzas Armadas chilenas son Fuerzas Armadas profesionales, que a lo largo...
The same professional armed forces that overthrow you. And you're talking about the Congress, which has existed for 160 years. Like, I didn't want to call them naive, but like, if your country's specific characteristics are basically the same shit that the West has, those aren't specific characteristics. That's a sign. You live in a bourgeois democracy, and basically, I'm not going to try to put the cart before the horse here, but basically, what he's saying is that, or is trying to say, is that because of his country's unique democratic traditions and its professional military that you can make Marxism through a long march through the institutions. I'm kind of saddened. I see why you had to give that speech, my friend.
Nuestra historia han estado al margen de una acción política propiamente tal.
Okay, everything is a political object. The military is a political object in the hands of the bourgeoisie, or the proletariat is represented by its party. Okay, there's no such thing as anything standing outside of class or outside of political action. Everything is political. Everything is political. If you are unable to uncover the political plots and the political goals of these supposedly apolitical institutions in your society, you have no business in politics.
Por último, y es lo más importante, la clase obrera chilena ha tenido una participación activa, ha tenido una participación directa en la formación de una conciencia y en las luchas populares. Hemos dicho que la revolución chilena la haremos en pluralismo, democracia y libertad. Cada uno de estos aspectos.
Pluralism, democracy, and freedom. Nothing about power for the proletariat. Nothing about sweeping away the old. You allow the old to sit, and the old eventually is going to kill you, like it did Allende.
Habría que profundizarlo, tú comprendes que es imposible. Sin embargo, el factor fundamental es y será siempre la clase obrera y su unidad.
Comandante Castro, respecto a lo que plantea el presidente Allende, ¿hay interés permanente de profundizar en cómo se produce la incorporación de la clase obrera y cómo entra la clase obrera como protagonista en el proceso de la revolución?
Fidel looks fucking bored. Like, I just love how he sits. He looks like he's about to rip into this dude, but Fidel was far too respectful to those he considered his comrades to do that. But he looks kind of pissed.
Cubana.
Nosotros hemos definido este problema.
He's like, what did you just say? I cannot believe what I just heard coming into my ears.
De esta forma, la lucha armada guerrillera que inició un reducido grupo de hombres fue algo así como un motor pequeño que permitió arrancar el gran motor de la historia, que son las masas. El movimiento obrero en Cuba, durante los últimos gobiernos, tanto el gobierno corrompido de Prío como el gobierno tiránico de Batista, estaba controlada por dirigentes oficiales que virtualmente habían tomado por asalto a los sindicatos, asesinando dirigentes comunistas y dirigentes obreros honestos. En esa situación, cuando triunfa la revolución, había una situación muy especial. No había dirección oficial obrera, pero había un apoyo total y absoluto de la clase obrera al movimiento revolucionario, que es un movimiento que se gestó con obreros y campesinos. Nuestros soldados guerrilleros eran hombres de la zona, campesinos y trabajadores y obreros, y algunos intelectuales o que podían.
So they're basically trying to talk about like the varying conditions between Chile and Cuba. Fidel is talking about how like Batista was fucking horrible. He was a torturer. He was a murderer. Kind of like Pinochet, who took over from Allende, who was obviously a good dude. He was just the Ned Stark of Chile. But history doesn't repeat itself exactly, and the universal resides in the particular. So one universal statement, one universal piece of knowledge is that unless you thoroughly replace the bourgeoisie, unless you thoroughly destroy the ruling class, the landlords, the people who you are expropriating and whose shit you are nationalizing, unless you get rid of those people entirely, they're going to come back to fuck you over. Like, that is a universal truth of Marxism. I'm pretty sure that Salvador Allende knew this because he claimed to be a Marxist. But the example of Cuba, like what Batista did, it proves it. And the example of Chile, what happened after Allende was either murdered or suicided, also proves it.
Pudiera llamárseles intelectuales por su procedencia o por su condición de haber estudiado en la universidad, que éramos nosotros, algunos de nosotros, no todos. En esas condiciones nuestro movimiento, que era un movimiento genuinamente revolucionario, se ganó el apoyo total de la clase obrera. Y así, al final de la guerra, en un momento crítico, mediante una estación de radio y sin contar con ninguna dirección organizada, se paralizó en cuestión de minutos a todo el país, mediante un llamado del ejército rebelde a través de sus emisoras radiales. Y eso fue en un momento en que ellos trataron de hacer una maniobra, un golpe de Estado a última hora, un factor decisivo en el aplastamiento de Batista y en impedir que se pudiera hacer ningún tipo de maniobra. Es decir, fue factor decisivo en la toma del poder en ese minuto. Y claro, después del triunfo de las armas, la clase obrera pues se organizó, se preparó y constituyó el baluarte, constituyó la masa de combatientes. Mientras nosotros por un lado continuamos desarrollando nuestro pequeño ejército, que llegaron a convertirse en poderosas fuerzas armadas, al mismo tiempo, en caso de lucha, en caso de agresión al país, lleva detrás todo el pueblo organizado, encuadrado en sus unidades militares, de manera que nosotros podemos decir que en nuestro país todos los obreros son soldados. Y también a la vez, como no hemos visto, en la necesidad de tener muchos hombres sobre las armas, y esos hombres en determinado momento tienen que participar en la producción, decimos también que todos los soldados son obreros.
Presidente, la clase obrera, de acuerdo con las dos respuestas de ustedes, pasa a ser el elemento protagonista dentro del proceso. Hay un elemento, el escenario. ¿Usted podría hablarnos un poco de la tradición chilena, de la tradición de lucha y del estilo del país?
Claro. A propósito, ahí se oyen algunos gritos que son de mis vecinas. Al lado hay un colegio de Sagrado Corazón y quieren verte. Bien, para contestar la pregunta de Augusto Olivares, quiero decirte, Fidel, que lógicamente Chile tuvo, por las características mismas de su régimen, la posibilidad de que la clase obrera se organizara. Nació el movimiento obrero chileno en zonas controladas por el imperialismo, y que siempre tuvo una conciencia antiimperialista. En el Salitre, Luis Emilio Recabarren fue el organizador, el orientador, el dirigente de la clase obrera. Y las luchas del proletariado chileno en el campo sindical llevaron muchas veces, como en la mayoría de los países también, a la represión violenta. Sin embargo, se superó y logró, a partir de 1939, unificarse en la Central Única de Trabajadores. Pero antes, los campesinos y los obreros habían formado sus partidos de clase. Así tenemos nosotros que el Partido Comunista es el más antiguo de América Latina, uno de los más antiguos del mundo y, por cierto, en relación a la población, uno de los más poderosos. De igual manera el Partido Socialista, un partido de clase, un partido marxista, que teniendo puntos discrepantes en aspectos internacionales algunas veces, ha mantenido con el Partido Comunista no solo un diálogo, sino un entendimiento para encarar juntos los problemas esenciales de Chile. De allí que desde 1951 el Partido Socialista y el Partido Comunista empezaron a caminar por el sendero de un proceso de clase y con la decisión de hacer posible un vasto y amplio movimiento que permitiera los cambios estructurales de la vida chilena. Y por eso hoy día podemos decir que al margen de un criterio pequeño se ha logrado, sobre la base de la unidad de la clase obrera en el campo sindical y sobre el pilar del Partido Socialista y Comunista, que sectores de la pequeña y mediana burguesía, como el Partido Radical, como el Movimiento Popular Unitario del Mapu, como los de la izquierda cristiana, hayan configurado este proceso que lógicamente constituye un factor determinante del proceso de cambio dentro de la realidad chilena. Esto es más o menos, Fidel, el esquema de lo que ha ocurrido en Chile y la presencia combatiente y organizada de los trabajadores en el campo político y en el campo sindical.
Uno está muy acostumbrado a ver imágenes de Fidel Castro cuando se dirige a multitudes, con mucho entusiasmo, con mucho fervor. Lo mismo pasaba también con Salvador Allende. Uno también está acostumbrado a ver esas imágenes de fervor. Acá vemos algo diferente. Están los dos distendidos, un periodista en el medio, muy amigo de Salvador Allende, cómplice se puede decir, pero punzante también en las preguntas. Y es interesante que hablan de temas que tienen mucha actualidad. Hablan del rol de los medios de comunicación. El rol de los medios en Chile fue fundamental para la caída de Salvador Allende. Hablan del futuro incierto de los jóvenes. Por supuesto que la realidad cambió mucho si uno piensa lo que han pasado en estos últimos 40 años. Y ya hablan de la posibilidad de la interrupción por la vía violenta del proceso de transición pacífica al socialismo. Alertan sobre la posibilidad de un golpe. Pero también es verdad, fíjense, que Salvador Allende resalta una y otra vez la lealtad de las Fuerzas Armadas. Pero Fidel Castro ya menciona la palabra fascismo, que es lo que se vio justamente después del golpe. Vamos a ver la segunda parte del documental.
La motivación de los pueblos en su lucha a través de la historia es variadísima. ¿Cómo podría usted definir, comandante, la motivación de la lucha del pueblo cubano?
Bueno, yo creo que la motivación ha sido la misma. Los pueblos históricamente han luchado por su libertad. Esas fueron las causas, por ejemplo, de las luchas nacionales. Si te remontas un poco más atrás, te encuentras siempre que hubo grandes luchas por la supervivencia, grandes luchas.
I don't know. I'm kind of iffy on saying if Allende was a class collaborationist because that's a pretty loaded and heavy term when we Marxists use it. Like, we're basically calling you, like, class collaboration is one of the key aspects of what we could call fascism. So I would say that Allende was a class collaborationist. Some more Gonzaloite type Maoists would probably call him that. But there's definitely aspects. Like, there's no discussion of what exactly builds political power. As Mao would say, political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. Does that mean go and take your fucking 6-shot revolver and try to capture City Hall? No, that would be stupid. But if you are in power, if you are the president of a country, okay, you've come to power by electoral means. Whoop the fucking do. You're a horrible revisionist. You're a horrible person. You are ontologically evil. Ooh. But if you've come to power through any means, you have to secure that power in the correct way, the only real way that you can remain in power without being murdered like Allende, like Salvador, like Thomas Sankara, like Maurice Bishop, like all of these people that we know. Shit, I had one guy try to tell me that Hugo Chavez was given cancer by the United States. Considering what the United States did to the poor people of Puerto Rico, I wouldn't doubt it. But you have to arm the masses. You have to train the masses. You have to ensure that the people are ready to throw down when they come for you, because they're going to come for you. They're always going to come for you. They're going to fuck your economy up. They're going to try to turn your people against you. They're going to astroturf protests. And if you are not careful, if you have not done your due diligence as a progressive, as a revolutionary leader, you are going to be destroyed. And you are going to end up in the same noble but preventable graves that Bishop, Sankara, and Allende ended up in. So, enough of this. I'm going to link this in my YouTube description when I upload it, so that you can watch it in its entirety. Auto translate is available if you do not understand Spanish. If you do not understand Spanish, I would highly recommend that you learn Spanish. So here's another documentary from what was formerly Red Fish, but is now Red.
Tens of thousands gathered.
Because, I don't know, they were fucked with in some type of way. So, same question I'm asking. Reform or revolution?
To celebrate 3 years since Dr. Salvador Allende's election as Chile's president. Allende and his Popular Unity Coalition promised wealth distribution and reforms that would peacefully lead to socialism. Allende insisted on a...
Ding! There is no peaceful transition to socialism. That's your number one fuck up. If you're pushing that line, you're fucking up. There is no peaceful transition to socialism. That is what Mao said. That's what Lenin said. Like, there is no peaceful transition. If you promote that line, you are not going to have a fun time. You're not. You're going to end up fucked. Just like Allende was. So, already 15 seconds in, we already see the major fuck up. Peaceful transition.
Confrontation that could lead to violence, despite the constant tumult he faced since even before taking office. Many of his supporters, however, were now urging his coalition to go on the offensive against attempts to destabilize and overthrow the government.
Also, look at how thick his glasses are. Like, that dude's prescription had to be mine or higher. Enough of conciliation. Now it's the time for struggle. Listen to the people. The people always know what's best. If they have the notion that you're conciliating, if they have the notion that you are not necessarily selling out, but you're not going as ham as you should be, they're going to tell you, and you need to listen to them.
September 11th.
Museum of Memory and Human Rights.
Chilean armed forces launched the second coup attempt in 3 months, this time attacking La Moneda, the presidential building where Allende and a handful of supporters attempted to hold out. In his last radio broadcast, Allende vowed to resist the coup, knowing he would not survive, but urged his supporters to avoid being massacred.
I'm going to keep saying this. How do you avoid? How do you survive? Arm the masses. He should have had fucking anti-aircraft on the top of La Moneda to shoot down those fucking jets. Manned by the people.
El pueblo debe defender, pero no sacrificar. El pueblo no debe dejarse arrasar ni acribillar, pero tampoco puede humillar.
Could things have been different if the leader heeded the calls?
Salvador Allende Gossens, born 1908, murdered 1973. Tengo fe en Chile y su destino. I have faith in Chile and her destiny.
From his supporters to defend themselves?
Yo era militante de la Juventud Socialista y tratamos de defender como pudimos el gobierno del compañero Salvador Allende.
Ricardo Clapp was among the thousands of Allende supporters that were rounded up by Chilean police and military in the aftermath of the coup.
Me capturan en la casa de mis padres el 25 de septiembre, de ahí me llevaron al Cerro Chena, en esa parte de la escuelita, eso fue durante todo septiembre. Era un lugar de feroces torturas, se escuchaba.
That stadium that he's in, I believe that's where Allende basically massacred, like, everybody, not Allende, Pinochet, basically massacred everybody that was against him. Maybe if Allende had done a few massacres, he would have still been in power, or his coalition would have still been in power. But that's where Pinochet basically did horrible things to people. The notable folk singer Victor Jara, his death was atrocious, like barbaric. He was a guitar player and folk singer, and his troops broke this dude's fingers, and they were like, "Here you go, here's your guitar, play for the people, you bastard," and he sang for them, like he went out singing. So horrible shit that could have easily been prevented.
Las torturas permanentemente, no a rato, digamos. El día 5 de octubre llaman a 18 compañeros en el Cerro Chena con sus nombres y sus 2 apellidos. Esos 18 compañeros fueron todos asesinados.
Chile's National Football Stadium became the largest mass detention center in the country, with over 7,000 leftist officials and activists jailed, tortured, and executed there.
Y de ahí me trasladaron el día 8 a la infantería y después aquí al Estadio Nacional. Aquí en el Estadio Nacional me tuvieron en una pieza que está en el sector de allá con mi primo y otras personas, y después como de 4 o 5 días a interrogatorio. Ellos estaban bastante extrañados porque torturaban compañeros al lado mío y yo como que no reaccionaba. O sea, ya estábamos tan acostumbrados en Cerro Chena a las torturas que prácticamente era lo mismo, nomás que tortura. Luego nomás para pasar esta situación.
Allende was elected as the candidate for the Popular Unity Coalition, which included Chile's socialist and communist parties, along with smaller left-wing groups. The coalition campaigned on a platform of 40 reforms that included agrarian reform, housing for all, and improved child nutrition. The Popular Unity called this the Chilean road to socialism, which would be achieved peacefully, reforming the bourgeois state to a socialist.
No. Those reforms were good. But those are not the road to a dictatorship of the proletariat, which is what socialism is. Those are reforms, okay? I'm a DSA member and a member of the IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World. If there was a slate of reforms like that seriously on the table in the United States, I would full-fledged, wholeheartedly, 100% support them. But I would not delude myself into saying that there was an American road to socialism that was actionable through reforms. Reforms are good because we should support things that are good for the masses. Free housing, improved child nutrition, nationalization of industry. Those are good reforms. But a dictatorship of the proletariat, what we could call socialism, the two terms are interchangeable, can only be established through the sweeping away, the utter destruction of the bourgeoisie, the utter destruction of the billionaires and multimillionaires who have made their money through exploitation. You have to remove that millstone from around the people's neck before you can seriously say that you're doing socialism. Again, reforms are good under capitalism. Only an accelerationist or somebody who wants the people to suffer would oppose reforms under capitalism. But at the same time, those things are not socialism. I'm going to keep saying this because a lot of people are still confused on this point.
One through the country's own institutions. Workers and students like Nancy Guzman drew hope and inspiration from this vision.
Ese día fue maravilloso, estuve todo el día pendiente con un cuaderno sacando las cuentas, cada vez que sacaban decían un porcentaje y yo sacaba las cuentas, prendimos la televisión, siento que van bajando del cerro gente cantando, ya la gente venía celebrando el triunfo de Salvador Allende y bajaba, era como que los pobres bajaban a tomarse la ciudad y eso me pareció tan romántico.
But far-right military officials supported by Washington were already working to prevent Allende from taking office, hatching a plan to kidnap General René Schneider, the head of the armed forces who refused to participate in any coup plot. Schneider was killed in a botched effort, and the opposition-controlled Congress reluctantly agreed to ratify Allende if he signed on to the so-called Statute of Constitutional Guarantees.
La democracia cristiana dice, bueno, yo voto por usted para que sea presidente porque él gana las elecciones, pero no la gana por la mayoría absoluta. Ese documento de garantías le impide, por un lado, cambiar a...
See, that's something that they always do. Like, okay, we're going to let you be president. We're going to let you have the title, but you cannot do this. You cannot purge the coup plotters. Like, honestly, I would have just said, fuck it. You know what? Fuck this piece of paper. I've got the people with me. This is what we're going to do. Let's throw down. Like, that's what a socialist, that's what a communist would have done. But Allende, I think, felt that he was between a rock and a hard place. Like, he was afraid that maybe one of his palace officials would murder him or something. But, like, never, ever, ever sign shit like that. Never, ever, ever grant concessions to the ruling class. Because when you do that, or when you allow the ruling class to stick around in any way, shape, or form, they're going to fuck you over. Like, okay, he gave us this. Now let's see if he'll give us this, 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 and this. And before you know it, you're in your office in the Chilean White House, La Moneda, with an AK-47 shoved down your throat.
A los comandantes en jefe de las Fuerzas Armadas y por otro lado apoyar cualquier grupo que aparezca como paralelo a una Fuerza Armada. O sea,
so they're disarming him. Never ever allow yourself to be disarmed. Like this is just the fucking conga line of L's. You can't change military commanders, so you have to rely on these people who hate your fucking guts, and you cannot build your own armed force because the military knows that communists rely heavily on the power of the gun. If you won't let us do this, then fuck it. We're just going to throw down. May the best group win. So they're basically putting handcuffs on him and putting a straitjacket on him. Like he can't win for losing.
Que tenga arma.
Allende's opposition had effectively tied his hands regarding the armed forces, but he and members of his government, like Health Minister Dr. Juan Carlos Concha, pushed on with delivering on their promises to Chileans.
¿Cuáles son los logros del gobierno popular? Empecemos a enumerar algunas cosas, no todo se puede hacer, ¿no? La nacionalización del cobre, la reforma agraria que crea las condiciones para la diversificación de la exportación nacional chilena, digamos, la distribución del ingreso, los programas de vivienda, ¿ya? Los programas de salud, y claro, y dentro del programa de salud hay que citar el medio litro de leche. Y se puede decir que en Chile fue erradicada la nutrición en menos de 7 años.
How evil do you have to be to oppose milk for little kids? Like, how evil do you have to be to oppose giving milk to kids, to oppose ending malnutrition in your country? Okay, you're the military. You're supposed to be the armed forces of the people. You are supposed to look out for the interests of the masses. But you are going to stage a coup against a guy, against a movement, against the coalition that ended malnutrition in your country, that is giving back the lion's share of wealth to the people. These people should have been taken out and shot on Allende's first day in office.
These reforms only drew the ire of Allende's enemies, and soon spare parts for U.S.-made industrial equipment became scarce, while a transportation strike exacerbated the shortages and the lineups for necessities and goods.
Que la derecha, como tenía plata, acaparaba. O sea, todos los alimentos, leche para los niños,
How evil do you have to be to hoard, to take away milk and medicine for children? Like, do you all remember, like, in the first days of COVID, you had all of these people, like, if you piss American cops off, if you piss American legislatures off, if you piss Americans in, like, right-wing Americans in the South in general off, like, you remember those bastards who were buying up all the masks, buying up all the hand sanitizer, buying up all the cleaning products and putting them in storage units, hoarding and speculating and profiteering? That happens in every crisis. Like, you had cops that were like, literally, what the fuck is wrong with you? People need that stuff. Like, if you piss American cops and right-wingers off and leftists at the same time, you are an objectively horrible, evil, ontologically evil person without question. That is what was done in Chile. You had the right-wingers, you had the Christian Democrat Party, you had the military take it away. Like, they would break into warehouses and take all the milk. They would take all the medicine. And you also have to consider, like, who owned the ranches who produced the milk, who owned the processing plants, who owned the pharmaceutical companies. Like, Allende should have nationalized all that shit on his first day. Because the only way to secure a supply of stuff like that, if you still got right-wingers around, is to shoot all of the right-wingers, execute all of the right-wingers, or drive them into exile, get rid of them, destroy them as a political force, destroy them as political agents, and nationalize the production of basic necessities and ensure distribution.
Remedios y todo eso los acaparaba, los metía en grandes bodegas, en propiedades que compraba e instalaba para acaparar. Y por lo tanto en los supermercados o en las tiendas no había simplemente alimentos.
So you basically manufactured a fucking crisis with the assistance of the United States.
La burguesía chilena no le quería que le quitaran los campos, y los campos estaban pasando a manos de los campesinos. Las industrias estaban pasando a manos de los trabajadores, por lo tanto los dueños iban a reaccionar. Por lo tanto, los que ostentaban el poder, los dueños de los bancos, todo, empezaron a coludirse, empezaron ellos a promover una violencia que iba a terminar con un golpe de Estado.
As Allende's government struggled to deal with these fabricated shortages, Washington cut Chile's access to resources and loans, while continuing to support and fund opponents to Allende in Congress and in the military.
El grave error ya conceptual chileno es del mito de que las Fuerzas Armadas eran civilistas. ¿Ya? Eso no es verdad. ¿Ya? Las Fuerzas Armadas están organizadas, digamos, para imponerse por la fuerza y cuando es la oportunidad, cuando tiene la mayor correlación de fuerza favorable, entonces van a actuar. Y por eso no hay una ideología, y por eso que por eso que se pusieron al servicio de una potencia extranjera. Hay una intervención extranjera, digamos, utilizando y comprando agentes políticos de nacionalidad chilena para los intereses norteamericanos. Hay gente que no necesariamente que sean agentes del imperialismo o de la CIA, sino que piensan como la CIA en Chile, y en parte son muchos partidos de derecha y de centro.
Frustrated workers form networks in factories to confront the economic sabotage and scarcity themselves, but also to push the government for stronger action.
Y seguimos aún diciendo, el compañero presidente nos sigue pidiendo a nosotros que tengamos calma, que sigamos actuando en esta forma y sigamos organizándonos. ¿Pero para qué? ¿Cuál es el miedo, compañero, de llegar a presentarnos los obreros en un paro general?
So you've got the masses that are literally calling you to act, and you sit and you do nothing and you hem and haw. Like, I hate saying this, but he kind of brought all of this on himself.
Javier Bertin worked in the first of these industrial belts to form, bringing together workers from 30 different factories in Santiago Cerrillo subdivision.
Bueno, mira, efectivamente los cordones industriales o el cordón Cerrillo, que fue el primero, surge como una respuesta al paro de camioneros y a las labores de sabotaje, boicot, lockout, ya que hizo la derecha y la burguesía. ¿Ya? Efectivamente fue una primera respuesta popular a las maniobras desestabilizadoras de la derecha y de los empresarios. ¿Ya?
Javier continues to be a member of the movement of the Revolutionary Left, or MIR, which was not part of the Popular Unity but maintained critical support for it. In the industrial belt spreading across the country, the MIR saw a true example of popular power that would be needed to overthrow the state. When an armored regiment attempted an unsuccessful coup on June 29, 1973, workers immediately organized to defend the government and the initiatives that they held as their own.
Cuando se produce el tanquetazo, en todo Chile, ya no solo en Cerrillo Maipú, en todo Chile, los sectores populares se movilizan, se organizan, se toman fábricas que no estaban tomadas, se acuartelan los trabajadores en las fábricas que ya estaban expropiadas y se colocan en pie de combate como para resistir a ese golpe.
Under General Carlos Prats and Allende loyalists, the armed forces regained control the same day. Just hours after the thwarted coup, Allende once again attempted to pursue a path of de-escalation, telling thousands of supporters who had mobilized to return to their homes.
Why would you do that? You just had a fucking coup, an attempted coup, el tanquetazo. Okay, so why would you send the people home? Why would you demobilize the people? Like, did this guy not know he was in danger? Like, did he think that shit was sweet? Like, bruh, why? You should have handed out weapons. You should have had your loyalist general hand out AKs to all of them and then station them at key areas around the city and around the country to ensure that that was not going to be repeated. Like, they're loyal to you. They are awaiting your orders because they see you as the instrument of the popular will. Yet you're not, bruh, like, what was he thinking?
Tienen que tener confianza en el gobierno. Ya demostramos esta mañana que la merecemos y seguiremos demostrándola. Compañeros, vayan a sus casas, besen a sus mujeres y a sus hijos en nombre de Chile.
Ella habían sabido de que el general Prats le pasó a Allende una lista de los generales que tendría que llamar a retiro.
So he's giving you a list of people that you need to shoot. Pinochet was probably at the top of that list, okay? This dude is in the military. He's around when these guys are talking about how they're going to fuck you over. You should have immediately had them all taken out and executed.
Porque estaban con el golpe. Y Allende le preguntó al general Prats si eso significaba que iba a haber un enfrentamiento, y el general Prats le dijo que sí. Entonces Allende no quiso llevar al país a ese enfrentamiento.
Confrontation is going to be brought to you. You didn't want to bring the country to the point of confrontation, but it came to the point of confrontation anyways, and you lost. Never run from struggle.
Como Prats le había pasado esa lista, Prats sí estaba dispuesto a jugársela por eso.
Aún sabiendo que le van a dar un golpe de Estado a las Fuerzas Armadas, no destituye a quien le va a dar golpe de Estado.
For some workers, this tank putsch or tanquetazo was a definitive sign that they had to take defense into their own hands.
Entonces se formó una comisión político-militar del cordón. Y dos de los acuerdos que te puedo decir que se tomó en esa comisión político-militar fue el desarrollar instrucción ya paramilitar en la fábrica a los obreros. Y yo estuve haciendo eso, por lo cual después, cuando caí preso, me cayeron 5 años de presidio por ese delito, ya por haber estado haciendo instrucción ya de defensa, ya. Y también se tomó el acuerdo de fabricar armamento.
The opposition, led by Christian Democrats, were now pushing for major concessions, including returning occupied factories to previous owners. The military took advantage of a recently passed arms control bill to throttle efforts being made by workers to arm themselves.
It shows how gun control always fucks over workers. So let's just recap. Okay, let's just revisit some things and unpack some things. They've taken away the milk and food from little kids. They've brought tanks to within spitting distance of your presidential palace to get rid of you. General Prats, your boy in the military, is giving you a list of people who want to destroy you, who want to destroy your movement and all of the good that you're doing. Because you're doing good. You're doing good things. That's why the right wing is mad. Mao said that it is right to be attacked by the enemy. If we're not attacked by the enemy, if the right-wingers were like, good job, Allende, you're doing a bang-up job, buddy. Allende should have been concerned, and he probably would have been. Okay, so you've got a list of people who want to fuck you over. You tell the workers to go home. They've passed a gun control bill which directly opposes workers, people, your loyalists, who are taking things into their own hands because you are apparently too weak to lead them as they should be led. And like it really couldn't have ended any other way. This is just an example of how, like, when shit like this happens, when coups like this happen, yeah, the United States, the CIA, the Chicago boys, all of these bad people, yeah, they profit from this, but ultimately it is the progressive movements, the revolutionary movement's own weakness that allows for these things to be acted upon. The CIA and the United States and Nixon could not have done shit if this was a strong, properly led Marxist-Leninist government that knew where political power comes from, that had purged the bourgeoisie, that had expropriated the hoarders' warehouses. That would not have happened. If Allende had had loyalist workers and anti-aircraft on the top of La Moneda, that would not have happened. Those jets would have been shot down. If he had only listened to the people instead of thinking that he, with his pacifist rightism, knew more than the people, he would have remained in power. So the issue was not that Allende was too left, it was that he was not left enough. He should have listened to Fidel Castro, who was by no means an ultra-leftist. Okay, Fidel Castro was not an ultra-leftist. But he had been through an actual revolution. He knew where political power come from, and he knew what the sellouts and what the old bourgeoisie and the comprador class would do if you allowed them to stick around.
Se empezó a ir para abajo básicamente por lo que fue lamentablemente la aplicación de la ley de control de armas que promulgó el propio gobierno.
You enacted a law that shot you in the foot. You enacted a law to take away weapons from your loyalists, from people who were willing to kill and die for you. That's why I call this dude the Ned Stark of South America.
Allende.
Esa ley de control de armas va a ser usado por las Fuerzas Armadas para entrar en las fábricas, en las viviendas, en donde sea, tenía la potestad de entrar bajo la excusa de que estaba buscando armas.
So you're going to let your enemies go through the houses and factories and businesses of your supporters and take away their weapons or violate their privacy.
Eso significó que murieran trabajadores. Eso significó que a mucha gente la torturaran en democracia, ¿no? En ese momento.
Under pressure from others in the military, General Prats and 2 other top constitutionalist generals retired on August 23rd. Allende promoted Augusto Pinochet to head up.
You promoted the dude that is going to kill you. And you let them purge your loyalists. Just, again, a conga line of humiliation and L's.
The armed forces, seemingly unaware of the plan that was already in the works.
Lo que pasa es que Pinochet había sido elegido por el general Prats, que le señaló a Allende que él era un militar leal, digamos, y todo lo demás. Y el general Prats se equivocó medio a medio, digamos, porque era lo que estaba esperando Pinochet, digamos, la oportunidad, un oportunista, ¿no es cierto?, para ejercer el poder que no había logrado ganar por méritos personales.
Desperate to find a constitutional solution and avoid a confrontation, Allende told Pinochet and other generals that on September 11th at 11 a.m., he would call for a referendum to resolve the disputes. The constitution that Allende bound himself to was about to be discarded, and the bloodshed that he desperately wanted to avoid was about to start.
Allende lo que se la jugó por evitar el golpe. Allende no quiso.
You know how you avoid a coup? Weapons in the hands of workers.
Que el país cayera en una guerra civil para que no hubiera una masacre. ¿Ya? Lo cual es un planteamiento.
And almost every revolution has come complete with a civil war. The Chinese had one. The Russians had one. Shit, even the United States had a civil war that ended slavery.
Legítimo y honesto. Pero resulta que la masacre vino igual años después, pues, ¿ya?
O sea, lo que pasa es que el pueblo, con mucha, digamos, conocimiento de lo que había pasado, el pueblo que quería armas. En la mayoría del pueblo, porque...
If the people want guns, give them to them. If the people want guns, give them to them. They don't want guns to shoot each other with. They want guns to shoot your enemies and their enemies.
Olía que podía venir un golpe de Estado. Veía a la derecha y a los fascistas en la calle, veía que ponían dinamita, que ponían cosas. O sea, desafortunadamente la izquierda, digamos, decía no a la guerra civil, un sector. Pero en esa situación, digamos, habría sido bastante distinto porque el pueblo, digamos, mayoritariamente estaba en la defensa del gobierno de Salvador Allende, aunque estaba desarmado.
More than 40,000 were jailed and tortured by the regime, including 32,000 killed and forcibly disappeared. The remains of almost 1,500...
That's where that stupid helicopter meme comes from. Pinochet's people, after they had killed you or tortured you to death, would fly you up in helicopters over the Pacific Ocean and tie you down with rebar and concrete and dump you in the ocean. That's what the helicopter meme that the stupid-ass piss boys, the soy fucking proud soys use. Very despicable people.
People have never been found. 50 years later, few have been punished for these crimes, and justice has been elusive for those who survived it.
No se le ha ido cumpliendo, digamos, en materia de derechos humanos. Un torturador hoy día tiene pensiones de alrededor de 3, 4 millones y un expreso político, el ingreso que le da son 200 y tantas lucas. Recién ahora están saliendo, después de 30 y tantos años de democracia, condenas que han salido del caso Operación Cóndor, donde fueron asesinados las direcciones del Partido Socialista, del Partido Comunista, de Víctor Jara. A Víctor Jara lo mataron después de trozarle las manos, de someterlo a feroces torturas, y lo fueron a dejar aquí cerca de la Panamericana.
The book's too dangerous to read. Ooh. So, what was Nixon doing when all of this shit was taking place? They actually just declassified a bunch of documents, but I haven't read those yet. I should have. But the president's daily brief. So basically every day the president gets like a briefing on shit that's happened around the world. This is from the day of the coup. September 11th, 1973. So let's talk about Laos and North Vietnam. Chile, all whited out, all redacted. If you're familiar with FBI documents or CIA documents, like they love redacting shit that people actually want to read. The USSR, they've got that there. Iceland, China, Norway. Like the shit that people actually want to read, it's not in there. There's this. Chile, the armed forces, with the help of the national police, have assumed control of Chile. A four-man junta composed of the chiefs of the armed services and the carabineros intends to govern with advice from civilians. Yeah, fucking right. The junta's plans for political reform indicate that such civilians will be businessmen and professional guild leaders responsible for recent anti-government shutdowns rather than political leaders who were opposed to Allende. These were the same fucking people. The people who were responsible for these fake-ass strikes were the same people who were the so-called businessmen and professional guild leaders because Allende was hurting them. Not hurting them as they should have. Ooh, more whiteout. And Nixon started fucking with this guy right after he was elected. A vested interest in the Chilean coup. 3 years earlier, right after this man had been elected, September 15th, 1970, Nixon had given direct orders to CIA Director Richard Helms to save Chile. For whom? By instigating a military coup to block the inauguration of President-elect Salvador Allende, which had been democratically voted into office on September 4th, 1970. Make the economy scream, Nixon mandated, according to Helms' notes from the meeting. Full-time job. Best men we have. How the fuck is your full-time job going to be to destroy a country? After Allende was inaugurated on November 3rd, despite concerted CIA clandestine operations to kidnap the pro-Constitution commander-in-chief of Chile's armed forces, General Rene Schneider, resulting in his assassination, Nixon convened his National Security Council to order broad U.S. government efforts to destabilize Allende's ability to govern. So you're fucked both ways, Allende. You are too weak to arm the people. You've taken an endless conga line of L's. The military is against you. Your boy in the military was an idiot who told you to bring Allende into, bring Pinochet, these fucking names, bring Pinochet into your inner circle so that he can stab you in the back, because apparently he doesn't know as much as he thinks he does, or maybe he's working with Pinochet. I don't fucking know. Anyways, you're fucked that way because of your own internal contradictions. And then you're also fucked because the United States is taking advantage of your weakness. Just like the United States took advantage of Maurice Bishop's weakness in Grenada that eventually got him killed. And after Cord and Austin and all these others had violently taken control of the country, the United States invaded Grenada using as justification concern about the welfare of a handful of American medical students there. So, more whiteout. more papers that are whited out. Brazil conspired with the U.S. to overthrow Allende. Brazil at this time was under the control of a bunch of generals, a military junta. This is from 2009. So Nixon and the president, who was a literal general, named Medici, that is hilarious, discussed Brazil's role in efforts to overthrow the elected government of Salvador Allende in Chile, formerly top secret records, blah, 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 blah. Nixon asked Medici whether the Chilean military was capable of overthrowing Allende. He felt that they were and made clear that Brazil was working towards this end. So Brazil was basically America's water carrier during this period. Because Brazil is basically the superpower of South America. So, yeah. President Medici opened the conversation by saying that he had high hopes for his visit before he came, but wanted President Nixon to know it is blah, 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 diplomatic gobbledygook. The president then said that there was one area in which he wanted to make his position quite clear. This was in connection with Cuba. As a result of changes in our policy via China and his forthcoming visits there and to Moscow, there were some rumors abroad in the press and elsewhere that there was going to be a change in our policy towards Cuba also. This was absolutely not the case. We had political problems with the Chinese and the Soviets, and we needed to talk about them. General Walters observed that in Brazil there was a saying which when you can trust the communists, they really are communists. Well, that's something. There were over 1 million Cubans in the United States. So they want to basically fuck over the whole fucking world, the whole fucking Western Hemisphere. They want to meddle in Bolivia. They want to overthrow the duly elected government of Chile, and they want to fuck around in Cuba. Nixon was a fuck. Kissinger was a fuck. Chile was the target of an intensive destabilization campaign that included economic warfare and terrorist attacks. The Central Intelligence Agency secretly financed striking labor unions and trade groups in Chile for more than 18 months before President Salvador Allende, Gossens, was overthrown, intelligence sources revealed today. They said that the majority, let me move this, of more than 8 million authorized for clandestine CIA activities in Chile were used in 1972 and 73 to provide strike benefits and other means of support for anti-Allende strikers and workers. So they've got an $8 million fucking slush fund. That's why they were able to strike. Among those heavily subsidized, the sources said, were the organizers of a nationwide truck strike that lasted 26 days in the fall of 72, seriously disrupting Chile's economy and provoking the first of a series of labor crises for President Allende. Direct subsidies, the sources said, also were provided for a strike of middle-class shopkeepers and a taxi strike, among others, that disrupted the capital city of Santiago in the summer of 73, shortly before President Allende was overthrown by a military coup. At its peak, the 73 strikes involved more than 250,000 truck drivers, shopkeepers, and professionals who banded together in a middle-class movement that many analysts have concluded made a violent overthrow inevitable. Never trust the petty bourgeoisie. A number of sources also explained that the Central Intelligence Agency, by using the Chilean black market, was able to increase the basic buying power of the $7 million estimated to have been spent on clandestine efforts between 70 and 73. The unofficial exchange rate, sources said, was as much as 800% higher than the official rate, indicating that the CIA's cash could have had a local impact of more than $40 million. So this is just more bullshit that they were doing. You had Operation Condor, the state-sponsored terrorism of the Chilean secret police. That was what murdered Victor Jara and those thousands of other people. And just more general crap that I really don't want to read about. So, What does the United States government, the Office of the Historian of the State Department, have to say about this? Okay. I know the State Department is a meme, but these people really engage in some 1984 type truthiness bullshit. Like, I would not be surprised if the United States has an actual ministry of truth, because this shit is lies from beginning to end. Relations between the United States and Chile deteriorated in the 1960s due to U.S. concerns regarding the Chilean left and the rise of Chilean nationalization of certain industries, especially copper. The Alliance for Progress, a dystopian name if I've ever heard one, signed in 1961 by President John F. Kennedy, was designated to prevent the spread of socialism throughout the hemisphere. The alliance allowed for monetary investment in Latin American countries that would help bolster infrastructure, education, and champion democratic governments like Chile. And Chile was one of the primary recipients of aid. The prospect of the nationalization of two of the leading Chilean copper companies, Anaconda and Kennecott, both owned by corporations based in the U.S., along with the growth of socialist sentiment throughout the hemisphere, led the United States to overtly and covertly send aid and assistance to the Chilean government, as well as to political parties such as the Chilean Christian Democratic Party, PDC. So, basically a bullshit history of what happened. Let's see what they say about this dude, Schneider. Neither the Nixon administration nor the Chilean government nor U.S. companies with businesses in Chile, Anaconda, IT&T, Kennecott, wished to see an Allende presidency, fearing his communist sympathies. The dude wasn't a communist, okay? He was a progressive. He was, I guess you could call him a vaguely democratic socialist, which can mean millions of things. But the dude was not a communist. If he was a communist, y'all would not have been able to do what y'all did in Chile. So the State Department does not take credit for the hit on Schneider. They blamed this Valenzuela dude. Ugh. This is the kicker. Debate continues on whether the United States provided direct support for Pinochet's coup. The United States had a long history of engaging in covert actions in Chile. It had provided funds in support of electoral candidates, run anti-Allende propaganda campaigns, and had discussed the merits of supporting a military coup in 1970. A Senate committee was convened in 1975 to investigate U.S. covert involvement in Chile during the 60s and 70s. The report found that the United States had carried out covert actions in Chile during those years and had even considered a proposal for Track 2, a covert action meant to organize a military coup to prevent Allende coming to power. However, it concluded there was little evidence to link the U.S. government to covert support of Pinochet's coup. So they're basically saying that we didn't have anything to do with it. We didn't have anything to do with it. That's what they're saying. So this is the type of shit that the U.S. government funded and supported or promoted through their policy of fucking up the Chilean economy. The march of the empty pots and pans. Middle-class, bourgeois women of Chile demonstrating against Allende for the terrible shortage and scarcity of the most basic food and day-to-day items that our husbands are responsible for because they built fucking warehouses to hoard all of the medicine and food and milk.
Pobladoras, dueñas de casa, obreras y profesionales protestan por el desabastecimiento. Llevan banderas y cacerolas vacías.
These are the most uninspired protesters that I've ever seen. Like, it looks like each and every one of them was handed like $15 and told to go bang pots and pans.
La marcha de las cacerolas, que fue interrumpida por los terroristas del MIR que las apalearon.
Good, they should have done more than beat them and throw potatoes with razor blades
Les
sticking
tiraron
out.
papas con hojas de afeitar adentro. Les clavaron los glúteos. En fin, 160 mujeres heridas en una marcha que nunca más se conoció en Chile.
Centenares de mujeres indefensas cayeron asfixiadas por heridas bajo las bombas lacrimógenas y los golpes de lápiz y cadena.
The terrorist group. Okay, we've already heard them talk about it. They were not even part of the fucking coalition that governed Chile. But apparently this terrorist group was Allende's right arm, even though they were not in the government. This is bullshit even by right-wing propaganda standards. So Chile rose up again a few years ago. Why? Because let's find out.
Hot raging for weeks and have gotten violent. At least 20 people have died, some at the hands of state forces and during looting. The demonstrations are the largest in decades. Some days have drawn 1 million people, grinding the capital city of Santiago to a halt. The government responded by declaring a state of emergency. It has since been lifted, but Chile's police continues to roam the streets, generating...
So this is supposedly during the democratic period. Like, Chile is supposedly a democracy now, and it's still fucking going 2020 on protesters like this.
Tension between protesters and the state.
Creo que tienen una idea más clara de que la democracia se gana.
Reshuffled a third of his cabinet, but people continue to take to the streets. During a march towards government headquarters, a massive fire was registered in one of Santiago's shopping malls after hooded individuals sacked the building.
Las protestas en...
And that's the thing that kills me about, like, South America. Like, America, like, we saw this for the first time with the sacking and burning of that police precinct in Minneapolis, but this happens regularly. Like, in Sri Lanka, a few years ago, protesters literally broke into the fucking prime minister's house and had their feet up on his furniture, if you remember that. Like, they will attack government buildings in the third world. Here, we're just like, okay, let's go burn down the Wendy's. Like, out there, they play for keeps. That's one thing I respect about them. I do not want to support trusted global news. So, this was from a couple days ago. Chile and Mexican presidents are calling for democracy. I mean, you two are the president. You all can actually enact democracy. Santiago protests flare on eve of the coup anniversary. So there, the annual march, an annual memory march composed of relatives of victims of Pinochet's dictatorship, turned violent when small groups of people sought to break up the demonstration, attacked other demonstrators, and brutally violated graves in the general cemetery. Gabriel Boric, he is the president of Chile. He's a millennial, and he is widely acclaimed in the West as a leftist. But I've seen Chileans saying that he's not so leftist. So that is a debate and struggle for Chileans to have, although I can provide analysis. Civilians threw Molotov cocktails at police vehicles and police fired water cannons at demonstrators. I categorically condemn these events, Boric said in the past. They spelled his name Boris, noting that he had proudly participated in the march. Their intolerance and violence should have no place in democracy, and those who have participated in these acts must face the rule of law. In 2019, widespread protests against inequality in Chile left more than 30 people dead. Human rights groups have questioned the police response during these protests, which left hundreds of protesters blinded. Hundreds of people blinded by rubber bullets. If you've never, like, been around a demonstration where rubber bullets have been shot, like these... Okay, rubber bullets were devised by the Brits in Ulster, in the northern part of Ireland, which they continue to illegally occupy. These are not like little BBs. Like, that's what you automatically think of when you hear rubber bullets, right? Like little BBs. Like, no, these things are, their technical term is baton rounds. These things are like this big, and the rubber is not like fucking kickball rubber, okay? This is hard rubber encasing a steel core. that shit can kill you. And the police, like, they blinded a girl in Minneapolis with these things. Okay? Like, they will aim for your fucking head. Or they'll aim for your fucking groin. Like, they aim to cripple. These things can snap your legs. So they're using that shit down there. And they didn't just blind one person. They blinded hundreds of people. And tens of thousands of people arrested. Like, people don't understand. Like, this is what's coming to the United States. You have this lady asking, "Donde están?" Where are they? This is her. This is a relative of hers, maybe her husband, maybe her son, that was abducted during the Pinochet era. Like, this shit is coming here, especially if we get an asshole like DeSantis or Trump in office again. Like, this shit is coming here. You think they don't want to round up tens of thousands of people, or they don't want to blind hundreds or thousands of commies or anarchists with rubber bullets? Yes, they do. They think that the democratic process, what little we have left of it in the United States, is too much. They think that we have too many rights. They think that we have too many freedoms. They would love nothing more than for people to come and drag assholes like me who talk into microphones and drag us off and take us to a stadium like they did in Chile. They want to do that type of thing. So you have to pay attention to shit that's going on around the world. Because just like Cop City is spreading across the country, you have Baltimore trying to build one of these fucking things now. And you've got various cities that are investigating how the state of Georgia and how the city of Atlanta are suppressing people's rights, democratic rights. You've got American cops going to Israel to learn how to better fuck us up. Like, this is a global struggle. Never ever think that, oh, it's just my city. It's just my town. We're alone in this. No. This is the same type of shit that's happening all across the world. So I really like Red because they get right to the fucking, I don't know. You can do your own research. Tell me next time I'm on. Self-proclaimed leftist president Gabriel Boric, heavily criticized by leftists in Chile, initially joined the protest but distanced himself from the event when clashes broke out. Like a typical politician, he said he categorically condemned these events. Blah, 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 blah. Notorious anti-riot police, carabineros. So, yeah, he doesn't like the protests. I don't know. That was kind of rude. I shouldn't have said that. Let's see if there is cop cities being built in California. I will help you. Or they don't, the cops themselves don't call it Cop City. Fuck. Oh, there's a bunch of post-training facilities. But I don't see any currently being built. Might be keeping them under wraps. They might be building some. Or they might be keeping them under wraps. Let's see what's going on in Chile. Thankfully, I can read Spanish so I can translate the graffiti. Protesters vandalized La Moneda in Chile.
Encapuchados vandalizaron los exteriores del Palacio Presidencial de la Moneda durante la marcha por los 50 años del golpe de estado de Augusto Pinochet en Chile. Un grupo de manifestantes destruyó con piedras y palos ventanales de la sede de gobierno, rayó los muros con aerosol.
That they just wrote up here, that says Free Mapuche Nation.
Gobierno rayó,
so there's definitely an indigenous element.
Los muros con aerosol y tumbó las vallas que cercaban el recorrido de la protesta.
Imagine getting that close to the fucking White House.
Agentes antidisturbios disolvieron a los encapuchados con gases lacrimógenos y tanquetas lanzaagua. 3 personas fueron detenidas y 3 uniformados resultaron heridos, según el parte del gobierno. A la marcha se sumó el presidente Gabriel Boric, quien reprobó los ataques a través de su cuenta de X.
You got that big ass water cannon. Like, these look like fucking Ninja Turtles. Like, this is some dystopian shit. And these things come in threes. Like, one thing that I've noticed about uprisings in the United States is that they seem to happen every 3 years. Like, you had, starting with Mike Brown. Like you had the Mike Brown uprising in 2014. You had the Jason Stockley uprising in St. Louis. That was sort of a localized thing, although there were solidarity actions in Chicago and Memphis and other cities. That was in 2017. You had George Floyd in 2020. So we're kind of overdue. I mean, the summer ain't over yet, or we may have a winter uprising in the South, but like we're overdue. So you can expect shit like this. Like I said, imagine getting that close to the fucking White House. What opinion does the population of Chile have about Pinochet? Let's see. Let's see if auto translate is available. No captions either, so that would be inaccessible. I'll watch it on my own later. But that's pretty much it. So to sum up, did Allende bring the coup on himself? In a way, he kind of did, because the policies that he supported, like that god-awful arms control bill, like gun control is the number one oppressor of working class people in a situation like that. So why the fuck would you enforce that law? You should have thrown it in the garbage, just like they did the Constitution after you took over. You should not have enforced that bill. You're camped out in this building, okay? You send your people home. When somebody's ready to throw down for you, you don't send them home if the danger has not passed. As long as you allow the bourgeoisie to continue to exist, the danger has not passed. It's never passed. Because even if you kill every single bourgeois in the country, new bourgeoisie can arise out of the system that you yourself have set up. That's why Maoism is so important, because it teaches us that the class struggle is not finished until communism. That's why People's War Until Communism was a slogan used by the Peruvian comrades. So when you talk about reform versus revolution, you have to consider what context you're in. Allende was right about that. But he thought that his country was so special because of not special things, because Chile is not the only country that has had a Congress for 160 years. Chile is not the only country that has a so-called professional military. Okay? These things are common throughout the West. So when you view reforms as being revolution, and when you stifle the energy of the masses who want to defend what they see as being their revolution, when you do that, you're kind of securing your own legacy. But ultimately, the example that Allende set has inspired generations of Chileans. It's inspired generations of people all over the world. And ultimately, though not in the form, not using the methods that he came to power with, venceremos.